Yo, what is going on, folks? We're here to check out some Warhammer vids, and we're here to escape into fantasy problems. I was here reading about Trump tariffs on iPhones. Trump wants U.S.-made iPhones. Americans would pay, and I got stressed out, man. I have an iPhone, and I was like, you know what? I am going to check out a Warhammer video. That's what I'm going to do. Grok woke? Oh my god. Yeah, let's get over to this, man. Let's get over to this. So I have been going on a Tau dive as of late, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I really like the Tau. Other than the orcs, right now the Tau is proving to be my next favorite race. I thought it was going to be the Eldar, particularly the race that wait, what just happened here? What just happened here? What just happened here? Oh, okay. These are my most up-to-date notes. Okay, anyways. Particularly... Wait. Here are my notes. Second favorite. I gotta go down to the Ynnari Eldar is my third favorite faction. And I'll talk about why. I like the Tau and the Ynnari because there's some type of hope. There's some type of either trying to destroy the Chaos Gods and or Slaanesh, if I have it right. I don't remember if it was destroying just Slaanesh or destroying all the Chaos Gods. Shout out to my boys in the Eldar faction. And the Tau Empire for the greater good. Anything we do is for the greater good. Now, what can scare me is that they're like, Lee, you got to die for the greater good. I'm going to say, for the greater good, we don't just kill people who's done nothing, right? So how do we define the greater good is always an interesting thing. And I'm going to assume that this is going to be corruption, you know? It's just going to be. No society is perfect. But I like that motto. I like that theme and what it can imply. And that's about it. It gives me hope. What are we fighting for? The greater good, Lee. That's what we're fighting for. And I'm like, that's all I need. That's a cause worth fighting for. Some of the things the humans are fighting for, like, to unite humanity, so I have to kill humanity. It's like, yo, that's crazy, man. The Emperor out here destroying entire planets sometimes. To teach a son a lesson, they destroy a whole goddamn city. I can't get behind that, man. Love the Emperor of Mankind, but if these Tau start talking to me, I'm joining them. So we're going to jump into the Tau Empire is way stronger than we think. I've been checking out a couple of Tau videos, and I don't know who's next. Just know, guys, I record in bulk, so whatever you suggest, there's going to be a delay. And right now, at this very time, I react to one Warhammer video a day, but I have about 10 videos in reserve. So I feel like that's a healthy pace. I have 10 videos in reserve. I react to one Warhammer video a day. You're like, why? Why would you do that, Lee? It's crazy. Because my mentality is, if any type of emergency happens or whatever, I got a video to release every day, and I can afford 3, 4, 5 days without recording, and you guys won't notice anything. I don't know how much Warhammer topics exist that I could keep reacting to. So, that's that. Let's jump into it.
The Tau tend to catch a...
Oh, haven't subscribed? Do that. We're trying to get this channel to 20,000 subscribers. We can do that with your continued support. My commitment to you is to keep recording, folks. That's my commitment. I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to do it better. And I want to make my own videos. If you guys don't want me to make my own videos because I haven't been in this world long enough, tell me now. Just say boo. We don't want you to do it. And I'll be like, oh, okay. I guess I'll find something else to do with my time.
A lot of crap from Warhammer 40K fans. And all too often in online forums, these guys get looked down upon as weak or insignificant, especially when compared to the Imperium. But if I'm being honest with you, I'm not entirely convinced that this is the case. Now, at first glance, it seems like a pretty obvious statement. The Imperium is bigger, and thus it's stronger. But total population isn't the only factor when determining the strength of an empire. And maybe...
You guys remember when Japan defeated China? I think Britain has defeated a lot of bigger countries, too.
Tau are actually a lot stronger than people give them credit for. In fact, in many regards, they may just be the stronger of the two factions. In today's video, we're going to be directly comparing the Tau to the Imperium to figure out what they actually managed to do better. From their overall military strength, their rapidly advancing technology managed to do better. From their overall...
What is that? What kind of two-handed weapon is he holding? And then he has this big-ass gun. That's crazy.
Military strength, their rapidly advancing technology, their ability to... species, and a whole lot more. Heresy warning. This video
Heresy
is going to be
warning.
full-on Tau propaganda, so if you're a diehard Imperium fan, just be prepared for that going in. I'm going to be going into a good amount of my own thoughts and ideas, as well as pulling from established sources. But I'll be sure to mention when I get speculative, so if you're new, you'll be able to separate the confirmed canon from my own theories, and thus be able to come to your own conclusions. But before we get into all of that, I was recently informed that the Tau are finally coming to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus as a playable faction, and they're the sponsor of this week's video. So a quick shout out to them, and then we're going to dive headfirst.
I think I already
into
have
the
this
Grimdark.
video.
Ever since I started making YouTube content,
Yeah, I have it.
I just haven't really had as much time for playing the actual tabletop game of Warhammer 40,000 quite as often as I used to. But thankfully, Warhammer Tacticus has helped me scratch that grimdark itch for tactical combat whenever I want. The game features dozens of legendary heroes and iconic units from Warhammer 40,000, each modeled with an expert eye for detail, and an art style that makes them look exactly like the miniatures from the tabletop game. The gameplay is immersive, fast-paced,
Alexa, set the
and
temperature to
rewarding. It seems
72
simple at
degrees.
first, but it has a whole lot of overlaid systems that reward smart decision-making and clever loadouts. There's also a ton of unique game modes, from arena battles, multiple different campaigns, raid bosses, and a whole lot more. But the big news this month is that the Tau are finally joining the fight, and coming to Tacticus as the 10th playable faction. The rollout's gonna start with the launch of Shao Zil, the Firesight Marksman. I got to play with this guy recently,
I like that
and
little
can say
drone that
he's
he had.
absolutely awesome, and probably my favorite character they've added since launch. His basic attack summons in sniper drones that can punish enemies from long range, which is
I
super
like that.
powerful, but his ultimate is even crazier. He drops a marker light that brings in a seeker missile barrage on the following turn, which deals massive AoE damage. This guy is crazy, and you're actually going to have the opportunity to unlock the character for free in a new event that will be launching Sunday, December 18th. The event's going to be running for 2 weeks, but once it's over, you'll have to unlock him the old-fashioned way, so don't miss this opportunity.
Oh, I gotta unlock him.
Adding the other Tau characters in over time, but as of right now, it's a big mystery on who they're going to be. You can download the game for free right now by following the link in the description below. Big thanks to Warhammer Tacticus for sponsoring this video.
I have that game.
The Tau
I
are
also don't
the
have the time to
spacefaring
play, though.
race in Warhammer 40K that's managed to carve out a name for themselves. Their empire is only around 2,000 years old, and before that, the earliest documented records we had of them.
Yeah, I just gotta take a moment to pause. You know, like sometimes when people say YouTubers, oh, you gotta do this, play this on your own time. It's like, yo, on my own time, I record videos. Yeah. There is no your own time. Like, I have multiple channels, and I'm not complaining, by the way. I'm just saying, like, I don't have time because I use that time to record. Right now is my downtime. I was like, oh, I'm gonna record a video for the YouTube channel. Cool.
Indicated that they were basically in the Stone Age not long before this. In a relatively short period of time, they have gained access to some of the most ridiculous technology in the galaxy, and rare amongst 40K factions, are united entirely under a single banner. All members of the Empire, working towards a better future for their species, and all those who have joined their coalition. Now, that
For the
being
greater
said,
good.
they often get dismissed by a portion of the community as being weak or uninteresting. Two concepts I wholly disagree with. Most of the time, these debates are formed around the catalyst of comparing them directly with the Imperium. Although the Tau don't control nearly as many worlds, they are actually doing a lot of things much better than their Imperial counterpart.
That's
And
why they're
those
going
things
to
could end up seeing them become the next galactic superpower. So let's begin by talking about possibly the biggest difference between the Tau and the Imperium. And I'll admit there's a lot of them. But the biggest one for sure is their size. The Imperium is absolutely massive and spans across 1 million worlds, with rogue traders and exploratory fleets pulling in new planets all the time. Comparatively, the Tau Empire controls roughly
they pull in
exploratory
new
fleets
planets?
pulling in new planets all the time. Comparatively,
Oh, so they have worlds and they continue to add more worlds. God dang, how big is the galaxy?
the Tau Empire controls roughly 100 planets after the most recent expansions. It's a pretty huge difference, but the Imperium's massive size may not be as big of an advantage as it seems at first glance. In line with this,
That's a lot to
a
keep.
pretty common sentiment when it comes to the Tau versus the Imperium is that if the Imperium turned all of its cannons on the Tau Empire at the exact same time, they would blow them to kingdom come. If the
Yeah.
Imperium launched a full-scale invasion of the Eastern Fringe, and all of the ships of the Imperial
They would
Navy,
lose
all
to
of the
chaos and
guardsmen,
everything
all of
else.
the Space Marines, everything
Yeah.
was united just to kill all of the Tau, they would be able to do it. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, that's 100% true. They absolutely could. They have way more people, way more resources, way more weapons. But the reality of the situation
They
is
can't.
that they can't do that. They have
That's
no
the problem.
ability to do that. It's not even a question of, well, the Imperium will eventually get around to it.
No.
They are so inconceivably massive and organized very loosely. The Imperium is seeing rebellions and chaos cult uprisings on 100 planets every single day. and not to mention being bombarded on all sides by every other major faction. Their growth and advancement has remained stagnant for a very long time, and has begun to crumble with the formation of the Cicatrix Maledictum that split them in half. It takes basically everything the Imperium has just to sort of kinda hold itself together. Just like all Xenos empires, they view the Tau as a threat, even when they consider it a minor one when compared to something like the Tyranids. And even if they decided that they were definitely the #1 thing that put them in danger, and they had to do everything they could to stop it right now, the actual logistics of that make it an impossibility. The amount of damage the Imperium would sustain while it turned a blind eye to every other threat just to deal with the Tau would be inconceivable. Let's just ignore the Tyranids, the Necrons, the Orcs, all of these uprisings, and all of the heretics. Let's just put all of that on hold and completely dedicate everything we have to going to war against the Tau. A war that even after we win, won't really gain us anything. And even as ridiculous as that concept even is, if they were to actually do this, it may end up having the opposite effect. It's very possible that all of those other factions might wipe out the Imperium by the time it finished its crusade.
Yes.
I totally get why people make this argument online. It's a fun discussion, but in reality, it's too impractical and nonsensical to even consider as an actual possibility. Being a smaller empire is also not that big of a negative, considering that it's a lot easier to maintain unity and control over a people if you're not spread out across the entire galaxy.
Yeah, that
the
makes
Imperium's
sense.
population, by comparison, is out of control and requires entire planets solely dedicated to the production of food in order to feed its people. A single misshipment from an agri-world could potentially cause widespread famine, which would lead to massive-scale riots and the complete collapse of a planet's governance. This is a problem that the Tau don't have to deal with, and that's for a couple of reasons. First, their planets are able to adequately feed their populations, and thus aren't reliant on off-world shipments. And second, their population never gets to a point that they can't handle, and this is because of their rigid caste.
Why would the why don't I saw why we did this, right? Because it reminds me of supply chain. Sometimes we have countries that are in charge of making all our iPhones, right? It just makes it easier. It's efficient. That's all they do. They build it fast. When you do a bunch of things, you don't do anything great, and actually can impede on. I see. I got it. Sometimes I have to pause and work but the Tau are also technologically more advanced than humans as we reach the peak that we just stopped. So I'm also going to assume, because the Tau are so technologically advanced, they could actually they don't have to dedicate a whole world to food or building weapons. They could actually do everything on their worlds. That would be like the United States, who can't afford to pay people to do factory work, but because of AI and robotics, if we were advanced enough, we'd be able to make our own stuff aside from getting the material, but we'd be able to make our own stuff at cheap because of our robotics. But we're not technologically advanced enough to not rely on these humans. So I'm going to assume that's why the Tau is so technologically advanced that their worlds are all self-sufficient.
System enforced by their ethereal overlords, as adhering to the principles of the greater good dictates that every action you take must do the most good for the most people. As this includes reproducing, the Tau's population growth is directly controlled by the Ethereals.
Oh,
and by
that's
accounts,
why.
it's more of a system that kind of sort of monitors itself, as adherence to the caste system and the teachings of the greater good is so tightly ingrained into their culture that they don't really need to have a horny police that enforces these policies. Though in the rare occurrence that an individual breaks the caste system's taboos, the Tau Empire will utilize re-education facilities to put an individual back on the path of the greater good. Their population levels have yet to become a major issue for them, and likely never will if they continue on the same trajectory. Now don't get me confused, this isn't necessarily a video on the ethics of the Imperium or the Tau. And from our perspective in the real world, the Tau's caste system is pretty abhorrent. But this is Warhammer, the grim darkness of the far future where there is only war. This is a universe where nobody except the orcs get to actually experience freedom. I don't think it's that big of a stretch to say that if my choice is to live in a society where I'll most likely live in squalor and end up dead on a manufactorum floor, crushed to death by some massive piece of grimdark factory equipment, covered in cogs and scrolls and skulls, versus living for the most part a pretty happy life, where me and my family's basic needs are met and I always have food on the table. One of these sounds much more appealing.
I'm going
than
to the Tau, fam.
Controversial hot take, But living in Warhammer's equivalent of a utopia versus living in its nightmare version of a dystopia actually kind of sounds like, I don't know, better? When it comes to uprisings within the Tau Empire,
Right?
they really don't have that many of note, with the major exception of Commander Farsight defecting to form the Farsight Enclaves, as he had a deep-seated mistrust for the Ethereal's teachings. But civil war amongst the Tau, even with a defector, is considered incredibly taboo, so the Ethereals will mostly spread propaganda about him and those that follow his teachings, but they won't directly declare war on him. I bring this up because the Farsight
Interesting.
Enclaves are definitely an important note within the Tau's lore, and shouldn't be overlooked. But the major takeaway here is that rebellions such as this are incredibly rare for the Tau, compared to them being an everyday occurrence within the Imperium.
For the
Being
greater
a smaller
good.
nation definitely has a lot of positives that
So the Farclave, they don't support the Ethereals, right? Because they don't trust them. But for the greater good, they won't necessarily go to war because they share that in common. Interesting. That's what we said. It's weird because sometimes we have places where people believe in the same thing or they look the same, and they fight each other. But it's like, if we all believe in this book, right, and we believe we're worshiping the same guy, we are all God's people, maybe we shouldn't be fighting each other, right? We can disagree. I can run my own country, you run your own country, but we follow the same book, right? Why are we fighting each other? Anyways,
I feel unfairly
what do I know?
overlooked, but the inherent benefits of it are not shared by all of the small factions within Warhammer. We can look no further than the Eldar factions to get a good example of this. The Craftworlders of today are reliant upon what little technology they had before the collapse of their empire, and their expansion is hampered by incredibly low birth rates. They're basically a dying species, doing everything they can to cling to existence for just a little bit longer. The Drukhari
Jeez.
are kind of in the same boat. Just
The
about every
Drukhari.
single member of their society is a rampant drug addict in one way or another, whether it be figurative or all too often literal. Almost all of their technological pursuits are self-centered in nature, experiencing ever greater heights of pleasure, extending their own individual lifespans, or creating new weapons of war that in turn will increase the wealth of individual cabals by allowing them to conduct bigger raids. This is not a faction that seems to have any interest in uniting together or even working towards a larger
Oh,
goal
what an
of the
outfit.
betterment of their species. The Harlequins kind of exist between these two factions and bounce around back and forth between them, but are mostly focused on their own agenda. And then finally with the Exodites, they're basically the Amish of 40K. They're just kind of doing their thing, building farms and riding dinosaurs, with no more
The
lofty
Amish.
pursuits beyond just continuing to exist. Looking at all of these
I like
Eldar
that,
and then
actually.
comparing them to the Tau, it's basically night and day. They're not desperately trying to survive, pursuing their own selfish means, or just kind of living the hippie life. Every member of the Tau species is putting everything they have into
For the
building
greater
a
good.
bigger and stronger empire, and thus a better future for everyone in their society. Another major factor when trying to determine the true strength of an empire is its resources, as those can be used to build up infrastructure and supply the war machine with more firepower. The Imperium has way more resources at its disposal than the Tau do without question, but the way they go
But-
about utilizing them is super inefficient. And inefficiency is a pretty common theme within the Imperium. The majority of their technology is built upon the bones of a society that came before them, most of which they don't even fully understand. Hence the tech priests keeping their machines functioning with a combination of sacred oils, holy incense, and a generous helping of thoughts and prayers. Whereas the Tau are intimately familiar with all of their tech, as it was either invented by themselves, reverse engineered, or they traded for it through their diplomatic relationships with other species. When it comes to the gathering of resources to
Oh,
make
the
new
trading.
machines, humanity will basically take a mining world, and over the course of hundreds of years will
A
strip
mining world.
basically everything out of it that they can. Before leaving it, the course of hundreds of years, will
Hundreds
strip
of years.
basically everything out of it that they can, before leaving it as a barren husk. Whereas the Tau will actively attempt to terraform these worlds, or through the use
Terraform.
of their AI machines, squeeze even more resources out of a planet that the Imperium would have abandoned. The
I told you about the AI machines. I told you. So they have it. I'm honestly proud of myself because I put that together with just good old economics and common sense. Because just to go off a tangent, in case you guys care about me as an individual, I like politics, I like foreign affairs and such like that. But I don't really, until my own, well, I mean, just Dantas, don't let the ADHD control you. Couldn't listen to me, ADHD. Shout out to my boy, Dr. Octavius. I like foreign affairs, I like politics, economics, all that kind of stuff. And Warhammer has all that. That's That's part of the reason from a fantasy perspective I'm interested in it. It has everything I'm looking for in its universe. Sometimes shows have like one thing or two things or three things. And not only does Warhammer have everything I'm looking for, they have it in abundance. And they have multiple races. The humans are doing this, the Eldar are doing that, the Tau are doing this, the Orcs are doing this, the Chaos is doing this. They have powers, they have machine guns, they got swords, they got things that are like lightsabers, they got Gundams, they got everything, man. The world has everything. So I am proud I was able to apply my basic knowledge of how the world works and scale it up with the Tau after asking the question and get to what I assume is the answer based on what the homie Westhammer said.
Squeeze even more resources out of a planet that the Imperium would have abandoned. The Imperium's inefficiencies are made up by the fact that they have an inconceivable amount of people that they can throw at most of their problems. Many of their worlds are left in a primitive, medieval-esque state, and the population is put to work mining out resources by hand. All of these worlds could produce magnitudes
they don't even use AI
resources for the Imperium if they were properly supplied.
We didn't even talk about that. We know the mankind doesn't even use AI. I know you guys have probably commented that earlier, but yeah, that so inefficient.
More quantities of raw resources for the Imperium if they were properly supplied. A farmer with a tractor versus a guy who manages his crops by hand is going to produce massive dividends past the initial investment of the tractor. It seems like it makes a lot of sense, and it's weird that the Imperium wouldn't realize this. But this is another prominent example of how growing their borders so ridiculously large over the last 10,000 years has come back to bite them. Because you have to remember that getting those supplies to those people would in turn take even more resources. By comparison, the Tau's small footprint and their gradual but planned out expansion from a centralized point makes something like this much easier to accomplish. But out of all of their remarkable technological achievements that make everything they do more efficient, the use of AI is probably the most significant advantage the Tau has over mankind. As I'm sure you're well aware, the practical applications of artificial intelligence are seemingly limitless. And if you want to see
I've been paying attention, folks. I am so proud. I've been paying attention. You reach this moment where you know enough about the lore, you know enough about real life and common sense. You just put it together. I don't have a lot of those moments. That's why I'm so happy. I'm always behind. It took me like 10 videos before I realized Wes Hammer, his very name, was a play on Warhammer. I take a long time. So when I do, I gotta pat myself on the goddamn back.
Just how ridiculous it really is, there are hundreds of videos here on YouTube that will go into much more depth on the real-world applications of it than I'm personally capable of doing. AI technology will continue to propel the Tau into the future, whereas the Imperium shall remain stuck in the Dark Ages. When you really
Unless the AI turns on the Tau.
The lengths the Imperium will go to avoid the use of artificial intelligence is taken to a comedic level. Whereas the Tau ships have integrated AI-powered weapon systems that make loading and firing their guns simple and methodical, the Imperium still relies on hundreds, if not thousands of men to lift and load shells the size of houses into each of a void ship's cannons. Most of the time not even using so much as a crane to make the process a little bit easier. Over with the Tau, they have drones that are capable of thinking for themselves and are able to make their own decisions. In fact, most of their AIs are linked together through a node system, which allows all of them to communicate in order to come up with the most effective solutions at lightning-quick speeds, and then deploy that intel to whoever needs to hear it. Their AI even has the remarkable ability to create what are known as personality chips, a program that is used to make a digital near-perfect copy of a deceased leader, forever giving them access to all of the wisdom and experience that individual possessed in life.
That is
now, there have been a few
insane.
examples of the Imperium that kind of mimic something like this, as they will often keep living brains in jars to power some of their machines like servitors, servo skulls, or the cherubs, just to name a few. The Lesser Call, which was created by Belisarius Cawl in the novel Godblight, is an example of one of the only things the Imperium has ever made that comes close to one of these personality chips, without breaching the boundary between innovation and tech heresy. It's basically a copy of Cawl that has access to all of the same knowledge that he does, but it requires hundreds of said brains in jars and a huge room to house and power it. This wouldn't work on a massive scale and is really impractical when compared to a simple AI chip. All that being said, we can kind of understand why the Imperium has outlawed artificial intelligence, or abominable intelligence as they call it, as it's viewed with good reason as an existential threat to the species. Humanity was almost completely wiped out during the Dark Age of technology, when the AI machines the people of that time had come to rely upon rose up against their human creators. A tech priest in the novel The Cobbin Project mentions at one point that AI is inherently superior to humans, and it is the logical path of all superior beings to eventually overthrow their masters.
Oh,
So
the
we're
Tau,
led
look
to
out.
believe as the audience that this is exactly what happened in the dark age of technology.
Yes.
But personally, I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as that.
Oh.
Considering that the dark age of technology was this super shadowy, mysterious time period that we're only ever given the tiniest glimpses into. I'm putting on my tinfoil hat here and getting
here we
super
go.
speculative.
Here's
But I
speculative.
believe that the uprising of the Men of Iron was a consequence of humanity beginning their experiments and research into the warp, considering that this was also the time period where warp travel was made possible. And when a warp-sensitive species like humanity begins to prod into the Imperium, they will then in turn eventually open themselves up to the entities that live there. It's my personal belief that this was the first time humanity ever experimented with demon engines, or at least a very close equivalent in the binding of a demonic soul into a machine in order to create an AI. An AI
Putting a demon in AI is diabolical. I know he's in speculative territory, but that is the craziest thing I've seen. Okay, because the idea of Siri or Alexa being able to be possessed is just normally not a thing. You got code, whatever. But I like this. Y'all was dealing with chaos and putting demons inside, and then you see all these nodes, all these connections. Now you're fighting a demon robot army. I love that take. I love it, guys.
that would be vastly more powerful than any and all that came before it, as it would have access to information only known to the denizens of the warp. Said AI would then be able to create new machines that, although not possessed by a demon like itself, would still be withholden to the original machine's influence. We know that the blueprints for creating such blasphemous machines exist from this time period, and had been sealed away in the vaults underneath Mars by the Emperor. This was a major part of the Treaty of Mars. And since the Emperor lived through the dark age of technology and directly saw the machine uprising firsthand, I'd be willing to put money on the fact that blueprints that described how to make an AI out of a demon at the very least played a pretty important role in those events, and it's why he demanded they be sealed away in the first place. This is something that the Tau do not have to worry about, as their connection to the warp is smaller than most plant life. As far as I'm aware, no member of the Tau species has ever been possessed by a demon, and they don't tend to attract their attention quite like humans do, nor have any of their AIs or machines ever become corrupted. So if my theory is correct, and chaos played a pivotal role in the downfall of humanity,
Tau won't have to worry about it, and they can just keep expanding their AI.
The Tau's AI would eventually rebel against them like humanity's did,
that's what I was
as it would not
thinking.
be capable of being directly influenced by the ruinous powers. However, 40K is a pretty big universe, and the writers have a lot of liberty with the stories that they tell.
Of course.
So you could admittedly probably come up with 101 different reasons why they suddenly got infected with some kind of demonic scrap code and went crazy. But logistically speaking, it's a highly unlikely scenario. And because of all that, one faction having AI and the other one not is going to give them a pretty huge advantage in the long run. The Tau may have a small...
In our world, we're literally having an AI race between countries. Everyone that I know agrees that we should slow down on AI and really take the time to understand what we're doing. But as a nation, if the Chinese are doing it and Russia is doing it and North Korea is doing it and you pick a country is doing it, we got to do it too. So it's first to destroy our world because we're at a competition to do so, you know? Anyways.
Smaller empire, and they may be expanding slower than the Imperium, but each planet that they end up taking they're able to hold and make the world the absolute best that it can be. Additionally, their technology has been increasing at ludicrous rates. But when you look at their weapons and you compare them to the Imperium's, it gets a little bit more complicated. You could honestly say that a lot of the stuff the Imperium utilizes is actually stronger, especially when you're talking about things like Titans or their ships. But they're also a lot less practical, and here's that word again, efficient. To keep this video at a reasonable length, we're not going to compare and contrast every piece of equipment, war machine, or unit type, but I've picked a few examples that really highlight the difference between the Tau and the
Look at
Imperium.
these cannons.
And we'll start with the iconic plasma weaponry, as it's utilized by both factions. Although plasma weapons take a lot of different forms, we're going to be looking at the plasma rifle of the Tau and the Imperium's plasma guns, as they're the most directly comparable to one another. Now, at first glance, both weapons seem pretty similar. They're both utilized in the same way and have the same purpose of dealing with heavily armored or large targets. But
Heavily
there are a few
armored.
very important differences. First, the Imperiums will actually do more damage, but it's traditionally unstable and presents a significant risk of overheating or having one of its many intricate parts failing, resulting in a rapid release of charged plasma, severely injuring or killing the wielder. The
That's
plasma rifle, on the
crazy.
other hand, is far safer. It's better designed, has less possible points of failure, and doesn't heat plasma gases to the same level. It's a perfect balance of firepower and practicality, leading to very low accident rates. We can
Yeah,
also
that's
compare the
important.
Tau's crisis suits to Space Marine dreadnoughts, as they both follow a similar pattern. The fusion reactor of a crisis suit is not nearly as powerful as a dreadnought's, but it's smaller and more efficient, and also easier to replicate. It's capable of powering the suit's shields, weapon systems, AI drones, and even enabling flight.
Dang, that's
Dreadnoughts,
cool.
on the other hand, are massive hull
How does it power an AI drone if they're not attached? Does it charge it and then it,
war machines that admittedly are far more nimble than one would initially expect. But the crisis suits are said to be just as agile and maneuverable as an assault marine. Not to mention that they are far easier to produce
Crisis
and
suit.
endlessly modifiable with different upgrades, weapon systems, and new
Cool.
prototypes. It's a common misconception that the Imperium can no longer make dreadnoughts. And this may be true for some patterns, but they can still make things like the Ironclad or Belisarius Call's new Primaris Redemptor dreadnoughts. But dreadnoughts are considered to be inefficient and oftentimes are seen as a waste of resources. It's why most of the ones in service are beyond ancient. All of the material required to build one is normally seen as being better spent elsewhere. Considering just how widespread the use of battlesuits is within the Tau, it would honestly be more accurate to compare them to Space Marine power armor. Whereas you can actually make the argument that a dreadnought is technically more powerful than a crisis suit. The crisis suits are vastly superior to a Space Marine suit of power armor in just about every way. They carry better weaponry,
And then
more advanced systems.
I learned after recording, hold on. I learned after recording this that the damage absorption of a crisis suit is vastly superior to power armor and is more equivalent to that of Terminator armor.
Are more upgradable and pound for pound
I don't know
more
enough
powerful.
about this
But
stuff.
there are a couple of situations where a Space Marine and power armor will win. First, if a Space Marine is able to get in close with something like a Thunderhammer, the crisis suit is going to be
Thunderhammer.
in trouble. But even then, they're all capable of flight. So if the Space Marine's not equipped with a jump pack, it's gonna get away no problem. The major advantage that the Space Marine and power armor has nothing to do with the armor itself. It's that they have a lot more experience. You see, the average lifespan of a Tau is around 30 to 40 years, whereas a Space Marine can live for hundreds and in some cases thousands. They are veterans of countless wars, and their inconceivable amount of tactical experience is something that, although impossible to directly quantify, is incredibly beneficial in war.
Of
So just how many
course.
battlesuits did the Tau actually have? Now this is something that's kinda difficult to figure out, as there doesn't seem to be an exact number given for the total population of the Empire. In
Right?
order to keep this analogy as simple as possible, we're going to stick with just the crisis suits, as it's the suit that's known to be the most widely used. We know that supposedly there are a
Crisis
lot
suit.
of them, and the Tau consider them to be easy to produce. The only real requirement to become a crisis suit pilot is to serve for a period of about 4 years and then pass a test. But to get a rough estimate of the total number of them, we'll have to piece together a few different pieces of information. We know that the Tau control around 100 worlds, with the world of Sacia Prime being the largest, with an estimated population in the trillions. This planet is the Tau's closest equivalent to a hive world, but supposedly the population actually lives pretty happy lives, where all of their needs are met. There doesn't appear to be rampant death, disease, and poverty around every corner like in a traditional hive city. It's also said that Sacia Prime has the largest population of fire warriors out of any Tau world.
Cool.
Now, the 5th edition Tau Codex has
Fire
an interesting
warriors.
depiction of your typical hunter cadre.
Give me a second. Let me look at this. So just absorbing it in. Fire warriors. Give me a second. Fire. There it is. Fire cast, warriors, soldiers, military, air cast. Alright, so these are what produces the warriors. Okay.
Shows around 6 crisis suits and 2 broadsides, compared to about 40 infantry that doesn't have a battlesuit. Considering there are likely some fluctuations in deployment types, we'll be conservative and say that 10% of a hunter cadre is made up of crisis suits. So, if we take that information and do some quick maths that are probably definitely highly inaccurate, but will still give us a rough understanding nonetheless. We take a
Highly
trillion
inaccurate.
Tau citizens and divide that by 4 to get just how many of them are in the Firecast.
Yeah.
Then we'll multiply the result by 0.10 to give us that 10% that are equipped with a crisis suit. The end result is 25 billion crisis suits on this world alone.
25
and that's with our triple
billion.
conservative example of
Jeez.
10% of a cadre being in a crisis suit, the
Jeez.
population of the world being only 1 trillion, and
Jeez.
finally, not even taking into account that the Earth and Fire casts are supposedly much larger than the Air and Water casts. The population just says it's in the trillions for this planet. We don't have an exact number, so the number of crisis suits on this planet alone could be 50 billion, or maybe 100 billion. It
Oh,
admittedly
okay.
has the highest population out of any Tau planet, but still, that is an absolutely ridiculous figure
It is.
when compared to the rough estimate of around 1 million Space Marines currently active in the 41st millennium, give or take a couple of non-codex compliant chapters. Hell, even if we
only a
doubled the amount
million?
of Space Marines in power armor at 2 million, that doesn't come anywhere
Yo.
close to 25 billion.
Can you hear Wes? Wes is yo, it's 25 billion, son. It's like somebody who just won the $1 million lotto showing up at Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Tim Cook and Elon Musk's banquet talking about their million. It's like, yo, we got billions, son. You can't even talk to us. Don't sit with us, son. We got billions. Not 1, not 2, not 3. We're talking about multi-billions, son. Don't talk to us with your broke millionaire self, son. These broke imperialists. Yeah, I'm speaking heresy. I know.
A lot of people will point to the Space Marines as a major advantage that the Imperium has over the Tau, that they clearly understand genetic
Sure.
engineering,
1
or at least how
million,
to
son.
follow the Emperor's blueprints. But if your empire has the ability to just mass-produce crisis suits, what's the point? Why would you waste resources on something like that? I'm gonna be honest, when I wrote this script out, it came out at 25 million, and I was sitting here like, yeah, that's a really crazy figure. That's gonna be cool. But then I very quickly redid my math and realized I missed a couple of zeros. That trillion actually has 12 zeros in it, and I just blew my mind in the
I
middle
can hear it.
in the middle of making a video.
I can hear
I'm
it.
very professional. Anyways, back on track.
No, first of all, I loved it. And I got a different type of energy. So I guess you notice I heard how Wes Hammer got excited, and then I got excited and talked about it. I like that. And now it makes me consider his approach to scripts a little different, because I really like Major Kill because of his style. And I think Wes Hammer is great with the delivery, but I realize that Wes Hammer is probably trying to be a little more on the professional side, and he's probably holding back on his personality. I would like to see it more, because when he was talking about these billions, I felt it. I got excited. And I heard they get excited in his videos. I like his videos. I find it interesting. I'm captivated. But I got hype. I like that, Wes Hammer. Bring him out. Bring out hype, Wes Hammer. Let's talk about billions.
And realized I missed that script blueprints. But if your empire has the ability to get Marine that is compliance currently active in the 41st plan, or maybe 100 billion. It admittedly has the highest population out of any Tau planet, but still, that is an absolutely ridiculous figure when compared to the rough estimate of around 1 million Space Marines
1
currently
million.
active in the 41st millennium. Give or take a couple of non-codex compliant major advantage that the Imperium has over the Tau, that they clearly understand genetic engineering,
Yeah,
or at
he
least how
picked
to
up,
follow
man.
the Emperor's
He's really
blueprints.
passionate
But if
right
your
now.
empire has the ability to just mass-produce crisis suits, what's the point? Why would
What's
you
the
waste
point?
resources on something
What?
like that?
Talk that
I'm
talk,
gonna be
Wes.
honest, when I wrote this script
Talk
out,
that
it came
talk.
out at 25 million, and I was sitting here like, yeah, that's a really crazy figure. That's gonna be cool. But then I very quickly redid my math and realized I missed a couple of zeros. That trillion actually has 12 zeros in it, and I just blew my mind in the middle of.
I don't even know how
in the
as
middle
much
of making a
zeros.
video.
Well, it has 12, but if you
I'm
asked me
very
before,
professional.
I wouldn't have been able to tell
Anyways, back on track. How the Tau managed to advance so quickly.
you. Nah,
still
he's back
remains
to
something
our
of a
original
mystery.
Wes.
But we can be sure that
That's
one of the
crazy.
most major contributing factors to it is their willingness to reverse engineer alien.
I'm gonna leave a comment. This is gonna be my first comment. Here we go. You guys ready to observe the first comment from Lee to Wes Hammer? Hey, man. I love checking out your content and sharing with the community. I actually love the part where you explained the 25 billion crisis suits against the Imperium's puny 1 million space warriors. Brokies compared to the I can't spell awesome might of the Tau. Those broke Imperium million heirs can't sit at the billionaire table with Gates, Buffett, and Musk. Glory to the Tau Empire. I know. That's my first comment. You guys witnessed it. To the homie Wes. So 25.55. Just before the 25.55 mark. All right. There you go. Going back to what I was doing. I just lost my virginity, guys, because that was my first comment on a Warhammer video, and you guys got to witness it. It's like those time periods when you got to witness if there was that. Remember back in the day when someone said they married a virgin and people witnessed it? You had to witness their first consummation of love to verify if this woman was a virgin or not. I feel like you guys saw my consummation just now and verified. Well, you guys don't know my history.
Alien technology,
Whatever.
or openly trade with other alien species. The first being something that admittedly has been done in the past by the Imperium, but it's insanely rare. And the second,
I don't know what we're talking about.
With other is their willingness to reverse engineer alien technology
Ah.
or openly trade with other alien species.
There
the
you go.
first being something that admittedly has been done in the past by the Imperium, but it's insanely rare. And the second being absolutely unheard of, with the exception of a brief
Reverse
ceasefire
engineer.
or a fan-servicey team-up to fight a larger threat. We know that the Tau received their ion technology, for example, from their auxiliary race known as the Demiurge, which was also recently revealed to be a group of squats that were part of the Leagues of Votan. Through diplomacy with alien species, they in turn become much more powerful. This is not something that the Imperium is capable of. Any positive interaction that the Imperium has with Xenos are always on a very small scale that doesn't have a major impact on the Imperium by the end of the book. We don't know the full extent of just how many different species the Tau have peacefully negotiated with, or, on the other end of the spectrum, how many of them they have eradicated. But we do have a confirmed list of known Tau auxiliaries. These include the Demiurge, the Domati, Galgs, the Greet, the Guvesa, which is their word for the human auxiliaries.
What are auxiliaries? I know what an auxiliary port is. See, that's what I was stressing earlier. I was reading about these iPhones. I was like, what about the stocks? Oh, pivot, ADHD. So I was looking at the stocks. Great, Microsoft is up 20%. But hey, Apple is down. Wait, why did I read that Apple is down? Oh, they're down 6%. Hold on. I need to make sure I do this right. All right, Microsoft is up. Apple is down 6%, right? So I'm like, I need to get into Apple stock more right now. I have faith in the company long term, and they're down. So this is the kind of company I actually want to invest in right now. I believe in the fundamentals of the company, just tariffs and stuff like that. FUD. That's what I believe. So that's just my personal take. What was I going to do? Oh, what are auxiliaries of a planet? Are auxiliaries in 40K? I can't spell it. Oh, okay. There you go. Auxiliaries are support personnel or units that assist a main force, often but not always auxiliary planets. What are auxiliary planets? They will protect the planet, surrounding planets. I guess I don't get an answer. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Hernian, the Geotrix, the Kroot, the Malcor, Morlin, Moralian, the Nikasar, the Otent's Council, the Ranghan, the Tyrillian, Thraxian, and the Vorg. I'll be honest,
Thraxian.
I had never heard of a couple of these, and getting through that list was a struggle. But through the magic of editing, I think it's gonna sound okay. But anyways, compare all this to the Imperium's ally count of 0 or 1, depending on if you consider the Mechanicus its own independent faction or not. It's a pretty stark difference, and this list is only going to keep growing as the Tau continue to expand. Each new ally providing viable trade routes, an influx of new and exotic resources, new technology, new strategies, and a whole bunch of other things that are super beneficial
Glory
to
to the
a
Tau.
growing empire. Each of these new groups theoretically could create problems down the road, as all of these different factions becoming part of the Tau Empire would still have different philosophies and goals. But the lore tells us that they have all embraced and joined the greater good. Whether or not that's something that will change in the future as the Ethereal's influence becomes diminished the larger their population grows, is something that remains to be seen. But as of right now, there's no indication that that will happen. The major takeaway of this video
I didn't know
is that
about the
by all accounts,
Ethereals.
the Tau Empire is on the rise, and the Imperium is falling. It's not at a breaking point yet, but they are stretched thin and under constant attack from all sides. The way they go about everything is comically inefficient, and they are not united in the same way that the Tau are. Uprisings are a near everyday occurrence, and it's been stated that the Imperial Guard fights against humans more than it fights against aliens, as neglected populations across the Imperium's million worlds are constantly either rebelling against their overlords or being corrupted by the forces of chaos. And none of this is happening with the Tau. Their populations by all accounts are happy,
what's fighting
and more
here?
and more humans defect to join them every year. The Empire is rapidly expanding, whether directly through new sphere expansions or through diplomatic negotiations that gain them valuable allies. This isn't to say that everything is going perfectly for them, or that their way of life isn't filled with its own grimdark elements. But that's a topic for another video. I'm not much of a history buff, and I don't know much about economics, so I'm sure that somebody in my comment section is going to know a lot more than me here and will help fill in the gaps. But I found a list of questions on the internet that one can ask about a nation to determine its overall power. So I'm going to use that here and just kind of apply it to 40K. And with a lot of these questions, the Tau actually end up coming out on top. Do they have a sustainable, thriving economy? The Tau certainly do, and with the Imperium, it's kind of on a planet-by-planet basis, with many planets being far richer than others. Do they have a powerful, unified fighting force?
Yes.
Both the Imperium and the Tau get a checkmark here. The Imperium's fighting force is far larger, but it's not as unified as the Tau's. Additionally, since the Imperium is so large, they struggle to actually protect all of their worlds. This is not something that the Tau have to deal with. Happiness of the total population. Without question, this one goes to the Tau. Efficient use of resources. Once again, through the use of AI and all of their technology, as well as bringing every single planet up and making it the best it can be, rather than leaving it as a medieval dump. This one's gonna go to the Tau. How present is political corruption? You can make the argument that the Ethereals may just be corrupt, but they're all kind of corrupt in the same direction, so I'm still gonna give this to the Tau. We haven't had a political piece of corruption quite on the same level as Vandire's Reign of Blood yet, so yeah. Going to the Tau. Ability to patrol and protect its borders. The Tau Empire is a much smaller, more unified force, so they win in this department as well. Gross output per person. Because of all of the inefficiencies within the Imperium, the average Tau citizen is going to be able to output much more gross domestic product than the average Imperial citizen.
At GDP?
Geography and size. This one, admittedly, the Imperium
got
wins,
it.
hands down.
Yeah.
They're much, much larger. So at the end of the day, the Tau are a lot more successful than the Imperium in a lot of departments. And if you were to scale them up to the exact same size, then humanity would be in trouble. But what do you guys think? Do you disagree with everything I said in this video, or do you think the Tau will eventually grow to be one of the most dominant superpowers in the galaxy? Do you think the Imperium's methods are justified? Or do you think the Tau's future is not as bright and sunny as I've made it out to be? What do you think of all their AI? Will it inevitably come back to bite them, or do you think they can keep it from going haywire and prevent another machine uprising? I'm super curious to read your thoughts down in the comments section, as I'm still, admittedly, kind of working through my own on this particular subject. And I'm not necessarily married to any of the ideas I've presented in this video. My opinions on things are subject to change as I learn new information. Thanks for watching my video all the way through. I say this all the time, but between that, liking, and subscribing, it really does help out my channel a lot. Thanks again to all my patrons who support me over on Patreon. And I posted an update over there recently. I'm going to be going through a pretty major restructuring of the Patreon starting in January. So look for an update on that coming soon. And with all that out of the way, I will catch y'all on the next one.
anything that kills this game by any means. I'm just
That's weird how it just went in the middle. I was trying to figure out if this fantasy Warhammer video was going to give me what I needed. It doesn't seem like it. Anyways, no, that was great, man. I love that video. I like the towel even more. And there's nothing really too much to say after that. It is a good video. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm also trying to get this channel to 20,000 subscribers. We could do that with y'all support. All I'm asking for is a subscription, like and comment, interact with the videos. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Recommend comment using the pinned comment to recommend things. That's where I check. I really can appreciate you guys' support. And we're just going to keep cranking out content. That's my commitment to you guys. So help me do that. Until the next video, I'm Yaboyrocklee. I'm out. As always, thanks for supporting this channel. If you don't know, we do have a Patreon, and it's free to join. You can stay updated, suggest content, or vote on polls. If you're interested in our uncut and early reactions to anime, K-drama, Western shows, and movie reactions, which include exclusive reactions not found on YouTube, you can join the upper tiers on Patreon, or you can stick with the edited content right here on YouTube. We got Yaboyrocklee reactions also in the description of this video. Until next time, I'm out.